Hey everyone, I'm your host Kosh, and this is the Creative Breakthrough Podcast. My mission is to eliminate the starving artist and provide creatives with the codes to build audiences, cash flow, and make a living doing what they love. Today's episode, I have the queen of social media, Keerose, but I'm gonna let her introduce herself because she does a plethora of things.
Thank you. You're too kind. Hi, everyone. My name is Keerose. I'm a creator. I'm a therapist, YouTuber, soon-to-be podcaster. I do a lot of things. My platform is essentially to normalize experiences. I always want people to feel safe on my platforms and feel like we're always having a conversation. I love to talk. I love having conversations. So if you follow me on any social media, you know that that's what we're doing there, and that creates meaningful connection for me.
I would say you are a podcaster now because you're on this podcast. But I wanted to ask you, how would you describe yourself if you only could describe yourself in one word?
I would say that's hard. Only one word. That's a hard one.
One word or one phrase, like one word or one sentence.
Okay. I would just say inspiring.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. When do you think you had your first creative breakthrough?
My first creative breakthrough? Oh man. I would say when I was writing poetry. And that was years ago. I mean, I was in high school when I first started. I was in middle school. And I knew I always loved to write. And when I realized I could write a really good poem, that was like so shocking. I was like, oh, like this makes sense. It resonates with people. Like this is so cool. And I don't write as much poetry now. I actually haven't written poetry in a while, but I think that's the most memorable experience as far as like how far it goes back.
You said that it made sense and it was cohesive and it resonated, but like, what did the process of that look like?
It looked like channeling my experience. Like I had to figure out how I was going to channel my experience in a way that reflected the truth and that told a story. That's definitely one thing that I feel like I had to get. What is the story? What do I want people to know about this experience? What do I want people to take away? And going through the story, going back and editing, seeing which lines make sense, which lines don't. And I think back then, of course, like we think of poetry like, oh, you just got to rhyme, right? I had to find my unique style, and I think that's a lot of trial and error.
And do you think that that helped you in what you're doing?
Absolutely, 100%.
In what ways?
I think it helps me because I have a bi-weekly newsletter that I send out to my subscribers. If you want to join, you can click the link in my bio, but I send out very long newsletters and my audience knows that they're long. If you want a paragraph in the newsletter, you're not going to get that with me. Like, it's going to be a story. I'm telling you something. I don't think I would be able to do that had I not written poetry. And I was also a creative writing minor in undergrad, so I think that really elevated my writing skills. But I just think the process of storytelling in a poem definitely helped me with vlogs, with how I talk to people, with how I see other people's story. It helped me a lot.
I can definitely see that. And if you want to subscribe to a newsletter that is a paragraph, you can subscribe to mine because it's a paragraph. I want to shift gears a little bit in regards to, you spoke how that helped your storytelling and how you have the email list, but like, what does your business look like right now? Like what is your business consist of at this moment?
I'm gonna be 100% real with you. That's still up in the air. I feel like I'm going through a creative shift at the moment. So I'm not really sure what I want it to look like. We're trying new things and just seeing what works. That's where I'm at with it.
It's testing.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on like what you've tested so far? Because I think that'll help people understand, like, because and this is something I want to get to as we get further in the conversation, but you've done really well online, like in terms of engaging people, in terms of bringing people in terms of newsletter and capturing people's attention, which is like a currency. You've done really well. People probably looking from the outside in are like, yo, Key's got it all together. She knows how to do everything. So I want to at least speak to like what you've been doing that's got you to this point.
Okay. So number one, I definitely don't have it all together. So if you think that, just get that out of your head. As far as what's worked, so I think as you shift personally as a person, your content just naturally shifts because you're no longer the person you used to be. When I first started making content, I wanted to connect with people. If you think back to like old Instagram 2019, man, that was a different time. It was a different
Yeah.
time because everyone was so engaged. That is actually how I started my platform, through conversation. I've always been known, like, I'm gonna have a long caption and you're gonna read it because I'm captivating your attention and I'm telling the story. And so that worked really well for me. That's actually how I built my audience, through, you know, storytelling, through caring about my audience as well. You have to care about your audience. A lot of us sometimes just like focus on like ourselves, and that's great, but you have to care about your audience if you want to build a meaningful connection. So having that reciprocal relationship, I think, with my audience really helped me. And as I grew, I realized that it was just a little bit harder to maintain that because it was more people. So I had to kind of just like realize that my platform had changed and that was okay. And I changed and that was okay. Now I'm just kind of like testing like how I want to connect and what type of forms I want to connect.
Yeah, you said a few things that were really great, but one is like connecting with people and accepting the fact of your evolution. I think about it like as artists, like as music artists, we could just say Beyonce because Beyonce just came out, but like whoever you like is not who they were even 2 years ago.
Nope.
And so I think the community that you have resonates with that. Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely. I think sometimes we like something and we like attach so hard to it. Like with Beyonce, I saw, you know, some discourse about folks not liking the album because it didn't sound like the last. And I'm like, well, it's not supposed to.
Right.
It's supposed to sound different. But at her core, she's still Beyonce. She still has that same messaging. It just looks different now. And I think that's the same thing that applies with creatives, is like, you know, how you present yourself, how you connect with your audience, the type of content you create, it's going to change. But most of the time, it's the same messaging. It's just in a different form. And I think we limit ourselves as consumers when we don't allow people to evolve.
Yeah, personal brands, right? It's different when it's like Kroger or... It has no face to it. So, no, I love that in my own life. And I think we've had conversations about this as well since Clubhouse days, like reinventing yourself, right? And for me, I had to reinvent myself when COVID happened because I was used to doing like in-person production and then that was dead for the most part. So I was like, yo, you've been diving into this marketing already, like understanding marketing so you can benefit your video production and your content production. So it's like, why don't you just pivot to helping creatives and artists do those things? And I did that and it grew crazy. And like you said about being engaged at that time because everybody was home. Because you've definitely had some success. Like you've definitely had some success. So I want to understand what systems or strategies, like what are maybe like 2 to 3 that you've put in place to get you to, how many subscribers do you have on YouTube right now?
That's a good question. I think the last time I checked, it was about 2,200, I think.
Okay, and you did that in how much time?
So I officially launched my like first video last August.
Oh,
when
wow.
I like relaunched my channel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like a year, that's great growth, especially because people don't subscribe to things.
Right.
Like what are some of the systems that helped you create that success, but also other success with content?
So I would say the first one is to just get clear on what you want to do, what you want your impact to be, what you want to talk about. Get clear on that. As soon as you're clear on that, it's easier to create because you have that clarity and you know, okay, I like so-and-so, so I'm going to create content about so-and-so. So I would say, number one, definitely brainstorm, experiment, whatever you need to do to get that clarity. I think for me, it was really just talking about life. I love talking about life's experiences. I'm 26, so I love kind of like catering to like people in their 20s, millennials. There's a lot of experiences that we go through that aren't necessarily talked about openly. And I wanted to change that. I knew that I also love like the funner stuff, like vlogs and talking about home content and body care products I love. And so having clarity on those interests really helped me with the type of content I wanted to create.
So you said getting clear on what you want to post, and then what's the next step?
To post it. That's the next step because a lot of people they're like, okay, well, what now? You gotta post it. You gotta post it and post it and not have an attachment to it. That's the key. And I think as creatives, we're sensitive about our shit. We want our shit to be seen. We want to be appreciated. We want to know that something that we've made is valued, and that's all completely valid. I just think that for me, along this journey, since I've been creating content for about 2 years now, I have to validate myself before anything. And that is so important. It's a mental thing too, because like, I mean, we could talk about the logistics of content, but really like the biggest thing is the mentality that you have around what you're creating. And I remember hearing this quote, and it said, you know, once you release something into the world, like it's no longer yours. And the reactions to that, you don't know what they're going to be, but that's not necessarily your business, because like you created with your full heart, you put your all into it, and that's it. Like, and that was your job. Your job was to see something you wanted to bring to life, bring it to life, and release it into the world. And so I think that was one of the biggest things. And as I talk to like people as well, I know that that's a huge thing that holds people back from posting, and holds people back from being creative, of just the result of it all. And it's so easy to get attached to the result, because again, we're not creating for nothing. We're creating to impact somebody, but sometimes like you just don't know how your content will impact or the result will be. So developing less attachment to it is very, very helpful as you start posting and you start getting creative.
So good. No, that was just like, I was just like, please keep talking. Because I'm always telling clients, like, especially when you first start, like, don't even look at the analytics for like 30 days. There's no point in looking at it, because a lot of that stuff is out of your control.
It's all like, let's take YouTube for example, right? Like we can make the SEO really great, we can have a really great thumbnail, but that doesn't guarantee anything. Are there best practices that help? Absolutely, but that doesn't guarantee anything. I have to remind myself this often, and I'll be completely honest, I'm in a very transformative period of my life. I catch myself having thoughts and I immediately snap out, because I'm doing something different. I'm switching up my content, moving forward in a way that nobody's seen me before. And so that's a little scary, right? Because you don't know what the result will be. But like I said, I have to validate myself before anything. And even the fact that I'm doing something different, that's a testimony to my commitment to my creativity.
Yo, I'm so glad you said that, because it's like, I heard this one time and it stuck with me. It's like, there's no guarantees in life. So you have to just put it out, and you have to be comfortable showing up day after day and nothing happening, because creative confidence comes from executing your ideas.
Talk about it.
It doesn't come from validation of other people, because, and I was talking to a client about this today, and he was telling me an old story in his life, and he said he had put out content and his confidence was swayed based on people's reaction. And so if you let people control your reaction to what it is, then you're never going to feel complete. Remember that this is a new time for everyone. Like, this is like, this generation of what we're doing right now this is new. Like, there's not a previous generation that we can really look at and be like, yo, this is how everything is done in this content arena. You have to be okay with knowing that. Like you said, there's best practices. There's people that have been successful that you can read about. You can learn the things they've implemented, and you can try to use that as a reference point. But you can't think that everything has to be, I want to say perfect, but
I'm so glad you said that, because before I got this live, I was thinking, and I was like, would you still do it if you knew that nothing would happen?
Yeah.
What is the thing that you would do if nothing happened? And whatever that thing is, that's what you need to be doing.
Right.
And I think, like you said, that detachment from the result is, I cannot stress that enough as a creative. Like, truly cannot. And I really hope that we can free ourselves from that, because it can really make you feel like you're not good enough, that nobody cares about you, that your work is not valued. But those are just stories that we're telling ourselves from like an algorithm, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's not, although it's valid, it's not realistic, because it's out of our control. But I do absolutely believe, especially even creatives that have been creative for a while and have been putting content out for a while, like you said, that creative confidence comes with execution. And that is honestly, like, as I am shifting into different content, like I recorded a Get Ready With Me chit chat yesterday for YouTube. This is the first time I've ever done that, but I've been wanting to do it. So I said, hey, I don't care what the video turns out to be, I'm posting it.
Yeah.
Because this was my first time, and the fifth Get Ready With Me, it'll be better, right? But I don't expect it to be perfect on the first time. I need to be able to execute this idea, learn from my execution, and then do it over again in a better way.
And that's what so many people get hung up on, and I've experienced that myself. I would rather test it than hold it. Yep. Because a lot of times what you're holding on to, you can put it out and be like, this isn't going to do anything, and it'll go nuts.
And you never know.
Right, and you never know. And it only takes one. That's the other thing that people get, I think, skewed on, is like, everybody's like, how can I go viral, and how can I make all this money? And it's like going up to the plate and swinging, right, at the ball. Like, they just keep throwing it, and you just keep swinging. Like, if you just keep swinging over and over and over and over again, you're going to get that one that's going to take it. But you have to, like what he said earlier, you have to know what you want to talk about and who you want to talk to, so that when that one does go viral, then it's a community that's actually there for the right reasons. Because if you get that viral moment, like, you've had some content like do really, really well, but you've had the community that is already there for a specific reason. And if it was just like, yo, I'm here today to show you new earrings, that wouldn't be what they're there for, and you would lose all that traffic in the first place.
For sure, for sure. Honestly, I think going viral is overrated. I think the one thing that comes from it is just obviously traffic, but it's not all this traffic to be, because like you said, you do have that risk of, oh, well, you're making a video about XYZ, and like, you don't even want to talk about that anymore. Like, you just made a video to share your experience and you're over it now, and then all of a sudden all these people are following you because of this reason, and then you're no longer serving them in that way, and so you almost become deemed invaluable to them because you're not serving them in the way that they expected you to.
Yeah. You're not serving yourself either, because you made a good point about wanting to get up and do it without caring about, like, if there was no stats, if there was no insights, and no money came from it, would you want to get up and do it?
Yeah.
Are you excited to get up? And that's like how you said, you were like, yo, I'm going to do this Get Ready With Me video, and I just want to do it because I want to do it, and I know the audience is there to see that because I've already created content similar to that in the past.
Yeah, and also I think for me, like, something really big has shifted within me this year. I started to think about excitement, and I started to prioritize excitement in my life. If it doesn't excite me, I don't want it. If it's not an exciting opportunity for me, I don't want it. And I think that's a little different than most people's opinion about creativity. But me personally, I don't believe in forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to. And so while being consistent and disciplined is important, you have to honor your body. Yes, be intentional about the content you're creating, but also know your limits, because creative burnout, that takes a while to come back from, and it is not great. Nothing about it is good, because you are going to be forced to rest, and you don't want to get to that point where you want rest to be something you intentionally do, not something you're forced to do. You have to honor yourself. You have to honor your body, and that's going to look different for everybody. Maybe you are someone that can create once a day and, push out content. And so it's like, yes, create content, but at what cost? I'm so big on self-care. I'm big on taking care of your energy, because when you take care of yourself, you take care of your creativity. When you take care of yourself and you pour back into your cup, you can be able to pour a little bit more freely because you have the room to do so. And so, sometimes we think we're always in a rush. That's the thing about us. We're always in a rush. Like, oh, let's say I want to film a YouTube video. Well, I have to film it today. I have to get it out. But those are like restrictions put on to ourselves. Now, again, you can balance accountability and discipline, but I think grace is important as well.
And I'm so glad you brought up wellness, because I want to speak to that. But there's two things that stuck out here that I want to talk about. One is belief statements. So you're saying, like, we put these things on ourselves because we're not questioning our own belief statements a lot of times. We're saying it has to be like this because I believe it has to be like this.
Yeah.
Right? And then the other thing is, in regards to wellness, and my whole thing is like creative wellness, like the person first, right? There's so many different strategies and systems that you can put in place. Like you can change your sleep schedule. Like you can go to sleep earlier and you wake up earlier, and that'll give you more time to create. You can create content for 30 days out before you actually post anything. And now you have 30 days of runway to even put content out while you're making new content or not feeling like making new content or however you're feeling. But the content's already coming out. I think what you said is so real, and it's really just like, what are we telling ourselves every day, and how are we allowing our belief statements to dictate how we move? And I think there has to be a balance between grace and discipline. There has to be, because too much of either one is not going to get you the results you want. But you got to just be real. Like you have to listen to your body, like you said. Like you have to listen to your body. And his name's Eric. He was my first guest on the podcast. And he said, your body tells you what your mind won't.
Absolutely. 100%.
And I love that. Like that really just like resonated with me. So, okay, so let's shift gears, because we could talk about how to build great content all day long. How do people that are trying to do what you do make money doing it?
So that's a loaded question.
Give me the full answer. We have time.
I don't have a popular opinion on this. So I'm a very spiritual person, right? Everybody has their own path, and we do not consider that enough. Like we see someone making $20K a month, and we were like, oh my God, how do I get like you? How do I do this? Like, because it's great to see that can happen for someone, because money is infinite. Abundance is infinite. However, that person and the way that they're making money does not mean that that's how you're going to make money. We need to emphasize that more, because you could be trying to make money in a way that doesn't even suit your gifts. And that's something that I learned, because again, I think sometimes we just like see it and we're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so I think that, of course, there's best practices, whatever, brand deals, affiliate, stuff like that. You don't need to do what you think you should do or what people are telling you you should do or what's the most successful, because that might not work for you. I think it's really a huge responsibility that we have to do our research and to experiment, because sometimes it just may not work. And so I think figuring out what your goal is, that is a huge one, because dependent on your goal is going to be dependent on how you monetize, right? So if your goal is like a community, maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's YouTube, or whatever the case may be. I've always been a community-based person. Dependent on what my goal is, that's how I'm going to figure out how to monetize. I'm a very multifaceted person. I have a blog, I have a YouTube, obviously on all social media platforms, and I'm about to have a podcast. It's going to work for different people. So say, for example, like I could make a YouTube video for people that are visual. I can make a podcast for people that like to listen. I'll make a blog post for people that like to read. And all that, I'm still connecting in the same way. It's just in a different form.
You are just going nuts right now. Like that's so key. Different people learn different ways, but you mentioned something that I don't want to glaze over, and you said do what works for you, but the most key point about that is research. And so using the references, like we were talking about earlier, reading books will change your life, or watching videos, or however helps you learn the most, but using other people's success as a reference point and not being envious of it. Yeah. It's just like, yo, this person did really well. Let me look into how they did well, and like, let me see if there's something that they learned that I can apply to my own system or strategy, and then apply that and then shape it in a way that fits my lifestyle, like you said.
It's a reference point. It's not an absolute. A lot of times we think it's an absolute because we see it and we know it's real. But again, like I follow so many creatives and they all do different things. And it's really beautiful to see that, because that's their path.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so quickly, what made you, because you were talking about you're like, I'm on all these platforms and now I'm about to be a podcaster. What is your reasoning behind approaching it from that way?
I would say, honestly, just like wanting to explore. I feel like there's so much you could do. there's so many people you can reach. And I think with like the knowledge that everybody learns differently is one of the reasons why I want to be on those platforms. And I like to talk. So, you know, YouTube is great for that. Podcasts, obviously, is great for that. So I think it's just like to reach different people and just kind of like extend the type of conversation I'm having.
I think that's a great point. I think there's one like kind of key point I want to make about this. Key is like a veteran at this shit right now. So if you're just starting, you should not be trying to go to all the platforms. You should pick like one or two and focus in on that, because it's very easy to burn yourself out very quickly with trying to create content for everything, especially if you work a 9 to 5 or you work some other job. Like I have like 15 clients and I'm still able to put content out across like 3 or 4 platforms, but that's even difficult for me at times. I think we get obsessed sometimes too and tell ourselves like, yo, I gotta be on everything so that people can see me. And it's like, build a community in one place first and test it, and then you can go from there. Do you have any points on that before I move to the next question?
No, I think you said everything.
I'm inspired by you because I saw your evolution over the course of like 2 years. Now, obviously, I didn't see it like I'm you. Like I wasn't next to you every day, but I got to see online your evolution, and you've grown and put the work in so much from probably the first Clubhouse call that we were ever on with a bunch of people. And it's just inspiring to see you not give up, and also to share your failures, I guess. I don't even know if you went your lessons.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe them. I think that's another thing that I'm learning more now in my life, but also when you're documenting and you're sharing this content, don't be afraid to show people, and I'm gonna let you speak on this because you're like, you understand it more than me, but don't be afraid to show people like the things that you thought were going to go one way and they didn't, and now you're doing something else, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it just goes back to that detachment we were talking about. I think for me, sharing is like a huge part of my life. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with an old friend the other day, and I had brought that up, and I was like, yeah, I just can't fake the funk. And she was like, no, you really can't. And she was like, that's why people can't stand you sometimes. And I laughed because I've just always been that person. If I'm feeling it, you're going to know. I think for me personally, sharing where I'm at in my life, not only healing for me, but healing for others. I know that I'm not the only one going through it. And that vulnerability is something that is a very powerful thing. And when you're not used to being vulnerable, sometimes it is going to feel like extra cringy, but that's not what matters. What matters is the fact that you are able to be honest, you're able to be transparent. And, you know, I talk about things that are like taboo as well. And again, it's so funny because when I talk about them, I get such a huge response of like, no, I'm going through this too. And it's like, had I not talked about it, I would not have known that other people are going through it as well. And I don't necessarily mean oversharing, right? You can be intentionally vulnerable and still have your own boundaries. You can have boundaries while being vulnerable, but I think sometimes, especially because a lot of people on social media, they see things at face value and they believe it. Like, oh, I see someone and they just got a car. That means their life must be so perfect. And it's like, well, you don't know that. Like, you don't know that. All you see is that they got a car, and then you apply all this meaning to it. Like, oh, their life must be so great because they got a new car. And it's like, their life could very much be great, but you don't know that. And we assume so much about people just based on like what they post and their accomplishments. And every time I see somebody say like, oh, people only show the highlights of their life, I'm like, we must not be on social media, because there's many people I follow that talk about the bad times, that talk about the lessons, the failures, whatever. And so I think, you know, if you're only seeing people that show the highlights, maybe you might want to change up who you're following, because there's a lot of us out here that are real, authentic, that are transparent and vulnerable, and you got to be willing to accept someone else's vulnerability and welcome it with open arms.
Yeah, you got to be willing to receive it and know that just because you see Keon here with 20,000 followers, she still has real problems just like you. And she's not perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. That doesn't exist. Being receptive of that creates real connection, and it helps people trust you because they know that you're a real person. Everything's not like, I woke up in a Bugatti, right? Everything is not that. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think if we continue to implement that, and if the market of people, everyone in the communities allow that to be the standard, it will become the standard. But we have to stand up for that, and stand up for that means like putting your own content out and not being afraid, encouraging people while they're sharing those things. And you made a great point about not oversharing. It's not like, tell me the 4-page letter, Aaliyah. Like, I'm not saying tell me that, but just give me like the one sentence of what happens. Yeah. Give me the snippet of what happens, and then how you're doing your best to try to overcome that, or trying to figure it out, because perseverance is worth its weight in gold. Like it's a lot.
And you know what I just thought about too, that we didn't really touch on, is that not only does vulnerability create community, but it creates resources. And then those people that know what to do about it will be able to help. And we don't think about vulnerability in that way, but I promise you, I have received so much help this year. The only way I was able to receive that help is because I spoke up and I shared something with people, and people just felt inclined to help me for whatever reason. And I'll always be forever grateful for that. But had I not just said, you know, this is how I'm feeling today, and this is what's weighing heavy on my heart today, or this is what I'm struggling with today, I would not have received that help. And so, you know, think about vulnerability as a way to not only create community, but to help you maintain resources and receive resources should you need them.
That's really good. That's like turning a potential lack into abundance.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, what do you have this community for if nobody's willing to help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's pointless, right? Because it's like you just got all these people around you, and that's it. And it's like, it doesn't always have to be a physical thing. That resource could be advice or an affirmation or a prayer or whatever, a connection, right? I'm going to connect you with somebody. It can be anything, but you have to allow that to happen by being vulnerable. And, you know, it can look so many different ways, but if you have a community, why not use them? That's what they're there for.
Yeah. I want to end this point with this. Like, the ones that will care will show up and care, and the ones that won't care have so many other things going on in their lives that they can't make it their business. So you can't worry about what everybody thinks, because everybody has their own issues that they have to deal with every day. And so if somebody's willing to extend their time or generosity or resources for a short period of time, just be grateful that that person had a moment where they could share it with you, and everybody else is irrelevant at that point. Most people are not gonna come at you wild and be like, yo, you're weak. Like, if you get that, it's probably a bot on Instagram.
Right.
So, like, just ignore it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Or just thank them. Like, I had a client tell me, he was like, yo, I put out this content, it's doing really great. And he's like, I got this one comment, and the dude was just like shitting on me. And I was like, thank him. And he did. And then the dude deleted the comment. It's like, people just want to get you out of your character because they want to pass aggression.
If it doesn't resonate with you, it's not for you, and so you shouldn't be bothered by it, or you shouldn't even be interested in it. And don't take it personal, right? Because we tend to take a lot of things personal. We tend to tie a lot of meaning to things that don't actually exist, or they're not an accurate representation. I've even seen things myself where I'm scrolling and I see somebody talking about something, and it's like, dang, I don't even have the capacity to engage with this. And I do wish you well, and I hope that things get better. But I just don't have the capacity to extend to you, right? But we tend to feel that way because we don't feel seen. But it's just so important to realize that, like you said, the people in the community that have the capacity to be there for you, to engage with your content, support you, to assist you in any way, value it, no matter what. Even if it's one person. Like, I don't like when people say, I only have. No, you have. Yeah. Language matters. So watch the language that you use in your daily life, but also watch the language that you use, like, with your audience, because even though we want more, right, we always want more. Appreciate what you have. Like, I appreciate y'all for being here. I appreciate y'all for sticking with us, you know what I'm saying, and engaging in meaningful conversation with us. That means a lot to me. We don't take it for granted. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 people or it's 100 people. I appreciate everybody.
Yeah, because it's real people. Yeah. And that's how we have to think about it. We've been conditioned to think about it as numbers. but these are real people. Like if you were having a conversation with 5 to 10 people at one time, that would be large.
Overwhelming, right?
That would be like you're teaching a class almost. So
yeah.
It's like just be aware of that as you create things. We're reaching an hour at this point, so I want to just, for the people who are unfamiliar with you, how people can connect with you and plug whatever you want to plug. Like that's what this time is for.
Absolutely. So, of course, you can follow me on Instagram. I have the same name across all platforms, Lifewithkeerose. That's how you can find me. Now, if you want to get connected with me in a different way, a more intimate way, you can subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in my bio for that. If you want to book a content consultation with me where I help you with your content and where we utilize your gifts to figure out how to create the content of your dream, link in bio. And I'm always open for a DM. I'm very open, very welcoming, outgoing. So if you want to come, stop, say hi, do that.
Yeah, content of your dreams is correct. So don't take that lightly. And then guys, I'm just gonna wrap it up. So once again, this is the Creative Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host Kosh, and I hope that you'll follow me so that you'll stay tuned for more of these podcasts. I do one every single week, and then they come out on all platforms. But thank you also for being here, because I knew that this conversation was going to be great, and it was. So peace and love, y'all.